So I asked the question on Twitter earlier, what is your favorite guilty pleasure movie? Now, a guilty pleasure movie is simply something that, you may determine it however you wish, but I see it as something that either is just seen as like the majority of people either look down upon it, or it's a genre of film like you shouldn't be liking, like it's geared towards like teenagers, but you as an adult love it more than the average teenager does, something along those lines. Or it's like the one movie in like a trilogy of films that is seen by most as, that was not that good compared to the other two films, but you, for whatever reason, like it the best. Something like Back to the Future 3. Okay, say you like that above Back to the Future 1 and 2. Now, the by far unanimous opinion is that parts 1 and 2 are significantly better than part 3. But if you like part 3, that would be seen as like a guilty pleasure type movie for you. Um, for example, the guilty pleasure movie that I listed was the movie Steel Magnolias. Now, this is by far seen as a chick flick. It's a movie where 90% of the film is solely women acting in it. Now, that doesn't automatically make it a chick flick just because it's predominantly dominated by female actresses, but it's geared towards women's issues, women's struggles, women's just life, and them standing up against the men in their lives and things like that. So, it shouldn't really be geared towards someone like me. But even as a kid, when this came out in like, what was it, like 1989 it came out, I think. Anyways, it was around 30 years ago that it came out. Um, that movie, I loved it as a kid. I've seen it at least 50 times. I quote lines from that movie so many times in my regular life. Anytime I see someone with sloppy handwriting, I say, insert name, you have the handwriting of a serial killer. Or if someone is just on a bench, I go up to them, push them off, and say, get off my bench! Those of you who've seen the movie will understand that. And no, this isn't turning into a movie channel, but I find this just stuff interesting to discuss. Some of the people that reply to me on Twitter so far, and it's only been up like a half hour, movies like someone said Jackie Brown, because, while that's not necessarily a bad film, it's considered to be the worst film of the Quentin Tarantino films. And, he likes it as one of the best Tarantino films. So that's a guilty pleasure to say something like that. Another person said They Live, a movie that I would consider to be on my personal guilty pleasure list. Because at the time, and I can remember when it came out, that was just seen as like a joke of a film. It's like a movie starring a wrestler. I mean, okay, it's a John Carpenter flick and all. And yeah, even the kid chimed in about that. Do you like the movie They Live, kid? Yes or no? Do you like They Live?
No.
What was that? Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. He hasn't even seen it and he likes it. So, what's that tell you? A kid that hasn't even seen the movie likes it. So, it's got to be a guilty pleasure if you like it. But anyways, yeah, a movie like that is a guilty pleasure because at the time when it came out, that was just seen as a joke. Like people were like, this is just an utterly ridiculous film, even though it has one of the greatest fight scenes, greatest choreographed fight scenes of all time. Great so much so that they recreated it with two crippled people on South Park. Anyway, what is some of your favorite guilty pleasure movies? And maybe why you consider something that is not necessarily seen as a guilty pleasure. Why would you consider it a guilty pleasure? Like maybe you can convince me of something that is not a quote unquote guilty pleasure film is a guilty pleasure film. Because again, this is kind of just like an arbitrary stance of why you would see something as a guilty pleasure. Anyway, just something to talk about here, just something to add a little frivolity to our lives, if you will. So, sound off in the comments. What is some of your favorite guilty pleasure films? I have plenty more that I may or may not want to say here. Anyway, best of the best. I mean, that I've watched that movie so many times. Oh my God. I mean, that is just 80s Eric Roberts at his finest. Oh my God. Has anyone seen Best of the Best out there? Because like I look at it today and I go, some of the acting is so bad. I was wrong. Hate was wrong. Okay, watch that movie. It's Eric Roberts at his absolute finest, and James Earl Jones is in it too. Is it co-starring role? Anyways, what are your guilty pleasure films? Sound off in the comments below. That is all. Bob Ross calendar.